So let's say that client that's been inquiring and he's put through multiple inquiries. What could he have done to make his job a little bit easier in terms of the search?
Sit down with your accountant, sit down with your financial planner as well, because I think that financial planning is important. Understanding exactly what your annual occupancy budget is. Now, the annual occupancy budget, people ask me, what is the...
I work with lots of different clients, especially like there's some very wealthy clients. And if I look at what they've done 20, 30 years, the income from that property portfolio is greater than the income from their business. But then I said to myself that I'm just going to do what my wealthy clients do, is just buy when I'm ready. What is a company title, if you want to explain it?
Company title is essentially you're buying shares. There's a corporation that's established. Say for instance there's 100 shares, maybe there's 1,000 square meters. You buy a portion of those shares and they correspond to...
This actually might blow some minds because most people don't realize it. The year is 2024. Where do you start? When people work in silos.
Yeah.
The worst is, what do they call it? Broken telephone. The accountant spoke to the lawyer and the lawyer spoke to the financier and the financier spoke to the property developer, and eventually it all came back around in the circle and now we're in the wrong city.
Now we're in 2024. We've had some major changes in the market. Like these are almost, well, they've happened before. I mean, but some of the people that I'm talking to are saying that it happened in the roaring 20s when we changed into the 30s.
Change is the only constant.
Yeah, that's right. Or the 1987 crash, which is what I'm hearing. Some people are saying, "Oh, I'm wondering if we're going into that." And obviously, speculating on what will happen is obviously a question. But what are some things that we can take out today to actually suggest might be a way to look at things in a rapidly changing environment?
I've got a question from Nathaniel. How long have people been saying to you, "Oh, don't worry, the market's going to eventually crash. One day it's going to crash and then I can buy a house"?
So I can use a personal example. Like I work with lots of different clients, especially like there's some very wealthy clients. And if I look at what they've done over 20, 30 years, I see that they've accumulated enough property that the property portfolio, the income from that property portfolio is greater than the income from their business. And all the successful business owners have done that. And then I said to myself, when I'm ready, I will buy regardless of what the market's doing. So I got myself ready, in 2023, got all my finances ready, engaged a buyer's agent, spoke to a lawyer, had the property ready, but then rates were just going up. And I was like, I don't know if I should get this property, But then I said to myself that I'm just going to do what my wealthy clients do, is just buy when I'm ready. So I took the plunge. I bought a piece of land, and then I'm building a duplex on it. It finishes in about a month. But the market's kind of come back. And I think if I didn't stick to that principle of like knowing where I'm at and like having the right team around me, and then that team kind of helps me make the decision as well. And then just taking the plunge, taking the risk, regardless of my emotions, because I didn't feel like doing it. The market was going up, the prices were moving down. I wouldn't have made that decision if I based it on my emotions. I just wanted to base it on good principles. And so I think when it comes to decision making, I think you need to have that good team around you, know where you're at, and you just need to make quick decisions. So I think that's an example of what I've done.
And very similarly for Bryce, I got a good one for you.
Go for it.
When is it the right time to start your own medical practice?
Actually, a range of different answers to that, and it depends on obviously whether you've got the expertise clinically to go out and set up something. It's obviously one of the questions that I ask when I'm talking to registrars that I've seen grow through their registrar training program in my past role as a medical device supplier.
Is that what all these trophies are for?
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. So I spent six years wearing scrubs and standing in theatres with doctors and sort of walking through life and their experiences with them. And the thing is there's lots of pivot points for doctors where they've reached a certain point where they've almost reached completion and they're actually able to provide a service. So let's just say that you postgraduate, you're actually finished, you're a doctor now. You could go out and actually then start your general practice fellowship and end up becoming a general practitioner. You might decide to go into a specialist training program, such as the SET training program for plastic and reconstructive surgeons or oral and maxillofacial surgery. In oral maxillofacial surgery, it's slightly different because you would have been a dentist first, and then you go and do a second training under the medical.
More training.
Yeah, more
How
training.
many years is this in total?
I've seen doctors that have been training for up to 20 years. And some of the minds that I come across every day, they impress me every single day. Like, it's just incredible to be surrounded by the level of depth, talent, intelligence with respect to how deeply they've thought about something. I mean, when you're looking at the mouth, you'd think that there's a bunch of teeth and a tongue and, and some cheeks, right? But no, there's actually so much that goes into it, and obviously research and standing on the shoulders of the clinicians that have been before. So when it comes to your question about when is the right time to start a practice, I think that when you've actually got a product that's ready to offer to the market, something that the market is going to respond to. So you might find that you can go out there with this new whiz-bang therapy, and the therapy actually is not something that anybody's willing to pay for, and maybe it's not worth doing that. The other thing is when you've got a good sense of what your future 10-year plan is going to look like. So I know where I want to be. I know where I want to be in 10 years' time. That's me as a business owner myself. I've got an idea around the steps that it's going to take to get there and the resources that are required. Also got an idea around pipeline and the things that I need to do every single day in order to help me to get there. So from a perspective of a practitioner that's actually looking to go and start their own thing, these are things that I would say are important. The other thing is having your finances in order from that launch pad.
But how do they choose the right place, and what do they become, like a shared medical center? Do they go into one of those little strip malls? What makes sense? How do you help them?
So from a location perspective, well, it depends. I mean, if you've got a retail offering, go into a mall. Like high foot traffic. If you are a business case generator, it's really important to actually realize that you are generating a business case. People are going to come to you. If you are a destination, then your location doesn't necessarily need to be where you're paying $2,000 a square meter to sit there.
This actually might blow some minds because most people don't realize it. If you're in the kind of business that justifies it, go in the shopping mall.
Yeah, that's right. If you're in a role where you've got people that are coming to you, you're inundated with phone calls of referrals because there's actually a shortage of your specialty. You could probably be in a shoebox in a car park and paying hardly any rent, or manage to negotiate free rent with people that are actually going to look at your value.
But I'd love to see one of your RX property billboards above a car park.
The thing is it's obviously for imagery purposes. I'd never put a doctor in a car park. I mean, I think that when it comes to a practice that is going to be something which is going to be complementary to other services. So integration is one of the things that I'm seeing. When we look over at the other markets and some of the ones that have got infrastructure that is actually further ahead than in Australia. I look to the US. I know that the medical system is frowned upon in some ways in the way that it operates in the US, but they've got some really nice pieces of infrastructure over there. And they've got things called ambulatory surgical centres. They've also got integrated healthcare centres.
What is the ambulatory surgical centre?
So let's just say that you're a plastic surgeon and you've got a theme of care. You actually have a building dedicated to that. Yeah. And it might have a hospital, like a surgical facility in there. It might have consulting rooms. It might have a whole bunch of other services that are actually linked in with that. Generally, an ASC or ambulatory surgical care centre has got provisions around the lift sizes and making sure that that you can get a patient out if they're in trouble. Depending on you're usually what you call subacute, and that means that it's not a patient that's coming to you because they're dying or they need to be admitted immediately to save their life. That's a high level of acuity that you'd see typically in Australia dealt with in the public setting where you go to your emergency department. Now, in the integrated health centres that we're starting to see, connecting doctors with doctors by way of proximity is really important. So one of the things that I've been focusing on is how that I can get the doctors that are actually going to pull the business case together for others to actually help them to integrate well. So we can actually create like a full circle of referrals. And coming from the sort of experience that I've had and talking to clinicians and CEOs of corporates, let's just use the example of a women's health centre.
Yeah.
You end up with maybe the persona of a patient that is looking to conceive. So they want to have their first baby. So when it comes to having a baby, first of all, you're going to look at, what is my diet like? Am I going to go and talk to my GP around the idea of getting some guidance around the process? So you go and talk to your GP, then they're going to refer you to potentially a gynecologist to get your routine checkups. They might be referring you to the nutritionist. The obstetrician, maybe once you're pregnant. You might end up going and talking to a fertility laboratory.
What about the psychiatrist?
Yeah, absolutely. The thing is mental health and stress. In my anecdotally and in my chats with doctors in passing that are actually in the space looking at young parents that are wanting to conceive, stress is actually an inhibitor to falling pregnant.
Just relax.
Yeah. And that's actually an anecdotal thing. Obviously, it's
if you were a high net wealth individual and you're a doctor and you've built up a nice finance portfolio, you could build one of these RX property medical practices, sublet to all of these different individuals, the different types of doctors, create the network. You could even have a anchor tenant like a Coles or Woolies or an Aldi, big parking lot, build a building that functions as a center, as a hub for all of this, and have this thing as a self-perpetuating business going forward.
Well, what you're talking about there is a mixed-use scheme.
Okay.
So, and it's important to also compare those types of properties as well, right? So, in a mixed-use scheme, you're going to have probably more your mums and dads type customers that are coming in. If you've got a Coles and a Woolies or something like that. Yep. If you've got medical services that are co-located with that actually can work really nicely. If you're wanting to go into the more specialized medical service offerings, you might want to be in a building where you are surrounded by, let's just use dental as an example. I'm a general dentist. I could go into one of those mixed-use developments and set up my shop, and it'll probably be okay. I mean, you just need to look at the likes of Bupa and the dental care that they're providing. It's actually largely in the Westfields of the world, right? But the thing is if you're a general dentist or a dental practitioner and you're wanting to refer on to an orthodontist or a prosthodontist or a endodontist, there's so many different specialists. You might even find that you have a patient that comes in and they need what's called orthognathic surgery. Now, I spent 6 years standing in theatre learning all about orthognathic surgery and how it works, and there's some really amazing technologies that have come out. But they might need to send them to a dual-trained oral and maxillofacial surgeon. Yeah. So if you can have all of these people in under one roof, patient doesn't need to move the car, so proximity being the key.
There we go.
You're starting to build, I guess, the idea of integration.
And it's synergy because 2 + 2 is equal to 5. You've now got a situation that's way more value than just the individuals by themselves.
That's right. And so the sum of all the parts equal more than just the individual, right? And so when you then broaden the idea of integration even further, I mean, you could be looking at a general practice that's also got bariatrics care, so let's talk about obesity and weight loss. So dealing with those sorts of treatments that are aligned with the outcomes that a patient's looking for. You might find that then there's the aesthetic aspect. So let's just say a plastic surgeon might remove certain things or actually help with lesions or that a general practitioner isn't able to do on site. And so you can actually have an end-to-end model of care. It doesn't have to be just down the women's health theme. I think the women's health theme is a really nice model because obviously there's so many common problems that you're getting that when a patient wants to turn up and actually go through, they can sort of go through the whole cycle without moving the car.
Yeah, I was going to say, instead of having to drive 10 kilometers left, 15 kilometers right.
Yeah.
So you find these are mostly attached to hospitals or private hospitals, those buildings?
Often they'll be in precincts. We are starting to see sort of a decentralized model of care in some ways. So because we're in the precincts, you find that the rent requirements are higher, and it's often hard to get land.
You've actually, to interject, you've created one of these. I think it was a mixed use one. You've done this in Queensland, you've done this in Sydney, you've done this in ACT. Is there a difference between the regulations, the rules from state to state? Does it even make a difference?
Well, it depends on who the question is being viewed from the perspective of. So obviously when it comes to APRA and regulations, it's a national body. You might find there's specific legislation and an accreditation that's required based on the law that's in the governing state. So say, for instance, if you're starting up a hospital, you might need to have it accredited by the Queensland Health Authority. Or the regulatory body that's in New South Wales if you're looking to do, a day surgery facility there. I guess it just comes down to having a look at the requirements from a compliance perspective in that local area, and that's where talking to a lawyer can be really beneficial to actually help to understand what it is and getting that license to trade. I guess the simplest way to put your answer is property is often property. The regulatory and development approval processes and all these things that go all the way through might be slightly different. Even the licenses that I've got, I'm licensed in ACT, New South Wales, Queensland, South Australia, and the list goes on, Western Australia now as well. The whole thing with that is that the legislation is different in each of the states. It's almost like we are, I'm a Kiwi, right? So it's so foreign to me. You've got the one regulatory body in New Zealand. It's almost like I'm dealing with 6 New Zealands now.
Oh yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
6 countries within one.
So it may be worthwhile as a practitioner looking to start up your own business to actually consider,
Yeah, that's a very good point, because if you've got a multi-state operation, you can have different laws, regulations, bodies, all of these different items. From a finance perspective, does this make any damn difference?
I would say the lending laws are very similar, but if it's a construction or a development application, then you have to go through the state or whatever's required there through a DA application. But in terms of lending, we still look at the same things around the 5 Cs, mainly capital and capacity and the collateral, that they're taking on. But it's quite interesting, I think about it from different perspectives, as in, are you the investor of that medical center or that precinct, or are you going in to purchase just one of those, maybe a little retail shop or a little space where you want to start your business?
So taking on a Strata unit.
So would you be kind of helping maybe individual people come together to maybe even develop and build something on there together, or would it be you'll be looking for a big investor to do that and then you put in the separate leases?
I think to answer your question, if I helicopter out of it, the actual structure of the property, whether it's it's going to be offered for lease or it's strata subdivided, so you can buy your units and sold, or it's actually one whole development that's built and owned by one investor, which is pretty much the same as the lease product often is. It actually comes down to the models of care that you're looking to establish and the problems that you're solving from a very patient-centric perspective.
Yeah. So let's say you're a doctor or a dentist and you have your practice already. You're running it, you're leasing it, but you want to own, right? But you look around Sydney, for example. We're based in Sydney, but you can't find anything. So you may see a building and there's an offering for them to strata title it, and then you put in an offer, but they don't come back to you. I guess where can you kind of help them bridge that gap if you're a doctor or a professional looking to buy?
Well, so from my perspective, it's just a matter of sitting down and having a conversation about what the locations are. Look, I've got doctors that recently finished or are new consultants that are looking to buy in the area around. It might be a certain part of the state, or it might be, because obviously across multiple states you end up with different catchment areas. Typically, my model is not that I'm necessarily looking and turning over things for people unless I'm specifically appointed to do so. When it comes to from my perspective, I've got over 40 properties that I've got access to at any given time. And so you'll find that there's often a property that's nearby that location. And it's just like, oh yeah, did you know about this? Or I had a conversation with this particular person. But if you're finding that that it's very hard to buy something, so for example, in the ACT, there's actually a very real example going on right now where there is a large co-located, or I guess you could almost say it was the original health hub of the ACT that's there in Deakin. And you've got a lot of property that's there that's for lease. You don't have very many facilities that you can buy that are actually going to accommodate more than, say, 500 square meters. So you find that there's actually certain segments where you might be able to buy a freestanding house and actually convert that across. Yeah. Thing is that I look at that model and I think buying a freestanding house, it's actually old hat. It's not very convenient for your patients unless you're maybe doing a primary care offering where you've got lots of car parking.
Look, without saying something, sorry to interrupt you, without saying something terrible on a recorded podcast, but we see a lot of people doing that where they're buying a place in the suburbs and they think it's really nice and comfortable. But at the end of the day, it's just a house. Yeah. And the house doesn't have the facilities, definitely doesn't have the parking. Yeah. And your neighbors hate you.
Yeah.
But if I guess with the onset of COVID, right, and the rise of hybrid working and like balancing life and being there with the family, I guess some doctors, if you're a destination where like they just come to you, and you're getting referrals and all that, why do you need to be in the centre? You could maybe be in a house, right, and do an extension and have your people come to you.
But is it a home?
Yeah.
No, look, it's always going to be horses for courses because some people might be. I mean, if you're a therapist or a psychologist, people love going to a house because it's not institutional.
It's a cottage.
Yeah, cottage is wonderful. It's a very comfortable, nice place to be, and it works. But I don't think it's going to be exactly the same if you're doing high technology, higher requirements. You need oxygen, you need gases, you need all those magical big strawberries that you work with.
I hear often that people just bought the wrong thing and then they have to sell it again.
It's terrible.
I hear it. It's like I get the conversations and the phone calls of, hey, I really want to buy something, and I'm like, it's great. I totally understand the advice that you're getting is to buy something, put it in your self-managed super fund, but you're trying to buy in the middle of Royal North Shore Hospital precinct, you know, or some of these very tightly held locations where the land price is actually, it's much higher than what you were talking about for the purposes of even getting the benefits out of your self-managed super fund. What is the limit on a self-managed super fund, actually a capital purchase, and it being useful to you?
A self-managed super fund is a whole can of worms that we can talk about on a different day, but the rules are the rules are the rules.
Yeah.
And the rules are long and the rules are extremely tight.
Yep.
And ultimately, it's higher grade maths, it's higher grade taxes, and it's very important to get it right. Sure. But it's also very, very valuable.
But if somebody were to come in and say, all right, I want to buy, and it's $10 million, which is common. The location they want to buy is $10 million for the underlying land, and you're looking at least $10,000 a square meter, you know, for actually buying Strata.
Let's go have a long sit down. Bring your bank accounts, bring your super, bring everything that you have, because it's going to need structure. And you're gonna need Mr. Nathaniel Rutter because you're not going to get help from the CBAs and the NABs or the ANZs, etc. This is not something that they'll want to deal with. I think they used to for a long, long time. And don't get me wrong, we work with the banks hand in hand all the time. But when it comes to SMSF, it is very different. It's a completely different story, and the rules are strict. And ultimately, one of the first things before we go into any other further discussion, it's much higher lending requirements. A doctor doesn't just get a 5% or a 10% put down. They need 30% on the deposit price. And you've still got to do stamp duty. And you've got the audit rules requirements, which means that the way that you use your funds until your retirement age or your transition into retirement, it's very regulated. And I don't say this is a bad thing, oh, you're not supposed to be regulated. I mean in the sense that once you commit, you're in, and that's it. And that means that you could do incredible things with your self-managed super fund and help build your future and your family's future and your descendants' future. But it's not a joke. It's not a very quick little thing. It's a 40-year investment. It's a 30-year investment. Yeah. It's a long process, and it can cost you a lot of money. But again, you could make a lot of money.
Is the self-managed part true about self-managed super funds?
I think it's 100% true, but with a caveat, and the
Yeah.
caveat is you'll need a lot of help.
Yeah.
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 And so going back to your question that you asked around, say somebody's looking to buy and they want to buy in a precinct and they're actually finding that they're actually blocked from doing it. There are different products that are available, much like your conversation around self-managed super funds and how it's actually at a higher order level of thinking. If you go and get the right advice from the right people around what your individual circumstances are, you will find that there's probably 2 or 3 different answers. One of them is you lease a property and you pay for the fit out and do it and run your business. The other option is to buy a strata unit, right? So you're buying a piece of a building. Yeah. And then the last option is to develop your own whole thing. And there are, believe me, there are doctors that are out there that actually have managed to nail this, and they're doing their own facilities. And so ultimately, if we go back to the patient centricity and actually looking at the services that you're providing, it's like if you can put that lens over and above the business planning lens, over and above the advice that you're getting, and then you can work out what that individual product is, you're fine.
Could we strike point B off the record? Because Strata is terrible. Strata sucks.
Why is that?
Why?
I have a Strata. I'm a member of a Strata. The meetings are painful. The committee is painful. Everything hurts.
Right. So,
But I'm not medical. I'm residential.
So are you thinking company titles then?
I
What
love
is
the
the
idea of
company title,
building.
if you want to explain it?
So the simplest way of looking at it is, and now we're getting into some of the detailed parts of property. So a company title is essentially you're buying shares. There's a corporation that's established, and say for instance there's 100 shares, maybe there's 1,000 square meters. Yeah. You buy a portion of those shares, and they correspond to the square meters.
So the company owns the property basically, and you're buying a share, which is
that's right.
And
actually, when I was looking at it, that's actually quite an old concept. Whereas with Strata, you've got usually your lot boundaries, and the way that you look at it is you can pull down the Strata plan. It's called an SP. And you can pull down those strata plans anywhere. So if any of you want to know how to pull down a strata plan and actually look at it, maybe we can do a little bit of due diligence on a given property. I've got access to tools to be able to do that. And if it's not me that's doing it, it'll be one of my colleagues. So you can look at it. The surveyor will go in and they'll measure it all up. Sometimes they have different measuring sort of methods, and that can be volumetric as well. So you're looking at the volume as a way of looking at things, or square meters on the floor plan.
Yeah.
And just putting it into as simple as possible. Strata is a product that allows you to buy it, but also there can be a tough time trying to find somebody to buy that off you if it's for a very bespoke purpose. So, yeah.
It's crazy whenever I talk about tax concepts, people's, their eyes start glazing over and everything goes above. When you guys start talking about the big, deep stuff within property, I sit here and I go, there's a lot of complicated topics.
So what kind of professional would you bring in to help understand that? Like the SP, and I guess it's a contract thing, right? So it would be a lawyer?
There's so many different teams that are in a property. So people look at a development, for example, and I'm involved with quite a few project leasing properties, right? Like, so I go and actually will take the project, I'll bring it to market, I'll work up a structure and a strategy around making sure that we're getting things right, all from a medical perspective, because that's what I've been focusing in. And in that team, there's town planners, there's lawyers, there's more lawyers. Lawyers are a consistent theme all the way. You can't get rid of them. They're important. I actually like lawyers.
We love you, legal.
Yeah. But the thing is there are methods around making sure that you're defining your scope when you are talking to a lawyer. It's actually really important to potentially enter into a term sheet or a heads of agreement before you get to that lawyer. But that's a different conversation, because they can save you quite a bit of money, right? Yeah. If you just say, hey, I want to do a deal here, then you can end up with two different documents that actually...
It's funny. I feel like they take a lot of slack in the industry. Everyone likes to laugh and joke about them, but My God, we've been saved by our lawyers.
Totally agree.
Our little neighbor next door is probably one of the best lawyers in the fucking city. Excuse my language.
Yeah.
I don't know what we need to do there on that. But ultimately, as you say it, like having the right lawyer changes everything.
Yeah. And the thing is that they're there to protect you. I mean, people are working in teams, and so you have your contract and all of that. It's only as good as the person that's behind the contract often. But the thing is, having a watertight contract can be useful. When it comes to the rest of the team, you've obviously got funds managers, you've got your development manager, and in order to actually understand the question around what is the property, how do you do some due diligence on it? There's potentially property consultants that I can connect in with that can actually provide a little bit of a report on what are some of the things you get your building and pest inspectors, much like you do in residential, right? And then you might have an engineer that comes out and does a structural check to make sure that the building isn't going to fall down or doesn't have concrete cancer. Believe me, I've actually seen it. Like concrete cancer, it's not necessarily always the easiest thing to pick up to the untrained eye. Yeah.
So how about for let's say they're buying a Strata unit, what are some of the things they can do and check, because you've run into some issues, right, or some problems? How do you check those things prior to buying?
You have to read those reports.
Yeah.
And you better get a lawyer to take a look as well. I mean, I think that's key. One of the reasons you have a conveyancer. The conveyancer is there to make sure that everything that needs to be there is right. But that's very residential. From a residential perspective, it's completely different spectrum when it comes to why are you buying this property, what's its purpose, is this an investment property? I mean, if we go back to, I think in the beginning of our discussion, we were saying, what's it like to be a doctor? I spent my first 14, 15 years of productive time training, so I've lost out on a lot of super and a lot of earnings. But then I make it back really, really quickly because I'm doing a very highly important job for high remuneration. And at this point in time, I need to catch up on things like, for example, do I need to have investment properties? Do I need to set up a self-managed super fund? Do I need to go straight to RX Property and say, I need to set up a medical practice with mixed facilities so that I can build myself a future for my family and my team? Or they're going to say to us straight, I want to be in the outback, in a small cottage. I want you to help me get this property. I want you to help me set up X, Y, and Z. The world is their oyster. I mean, right now, we always talk about in the accounting world, analysis paralysis. You have too many options. And this is probably why you have to have other people talking to you, because it's nicer to just have, I mean, Nathaniel, you go to them and you tell, look, here's the best thing that you could do with your money. That's a great idea. And then let them marinate on it.
Yeah.
It's actually funny, the too many options. You know, you get presented with 10 and you choose none,
Yeah.
right? Because it's just too much.
I can't. It's too much.
I get sometimes phone calls and I call them serial inquirers. And I'm not.
Am I one of those people?
No. So I'm not kidding. So through the real estate portals, it's quite funny because you end up with a bit of a view of who people are and when they start popping up. I've had one person inquire on 3 properties all in the same precinct and then talk to my other agent colleagues that I work with and found out that they've inquired on every other project, but for the last 12 months.
Do you think they wouldn't be as nervous if they actually had a proper team behind them?
I think that they wouldn't even be putting the inquiries in. I think that they would have a well-defined scope. They'd know what they're looking for. They'd come in. They wouldn't waste the time of the agents. And I'm not talking about me. I'm talking about, you know, my co-agents that are very local and they're having to do a lot of the inspections as well.
In the medical parlance, this is called a symptom of a deeper problem.
Yeah.
So that inquiry, was it for a lease or a purchase?
Often you get people that are inquiring on properties that are advertised for lease as can I buy it? And often it's important to understand who owns the building as well. Yeah. So when you inquire on a property that's for lease, it's like trying to buy a retail shop off Wesfarmers, you know, in a mall. It's like, can I buy it? But often you get the questions anyway, and it's absolutely okay. Usually what I'd find is that if they're more in the market to buy, then it's just really a conversation of, well, who can I connect them with that's going to actually help them? Yeah. And often I'll pass it on to, you know, sometimes even a buyer's agent if they're really having trouble, where they'll turn it over and they're experts in the area, specifically that area if I can.
Yep. So let's say that client that's been inquiring and he's put through multiple inquiries. What could he have done, like in terms of like a few things that he could have done to make his job a little bit easier in terms of the search?
Well, I think sit down with your accountant, sit down with your financial planner as well, because I think that financial planning is important. Understanding exactly what your annual occupancy budget is.
Yeah.
Now, the annual occupancy budget, people ask me, what is the rent? That's the first question I get asked. It's like, that's like going to a McDonald's and buying a burger and asking how much, like, what does it taste like? You know, it's actually irrelevant. The rent is something which is a commercial consideration, but the thing is there's 2 or 3 other factors that are often tied to it, which people don't realize. If you go low on the rent, and you can actually dial up or dial down your rent, you can dial up or dial down your rent with the landlord, obviously within the margin within which they're willing to accept.
Yeah.
And what would happen is your incentive, which is, say for instance, a landlord goes, all right, I've got a big bucket of cash. If they're a private landlord and maybe that's their first investment, they may not have a lot of cash. They might give it to you in the form of rent free. But the thing is that within a certain band, if you get the rent right and bang on the money on what the landlord is doing, you might find that you get a generous incentive.
Yeah.
And that incentive can pay for things like part of the fit out. And then that means that your out-of-pocket gap that goes into paying for that fit out is less. And so you can go then and approach your mortgage broker. You could even turn around and have some really sound financial advice that might say, okay, we can, you can service a loan that's as high as possible. You're actually looking to procure debt from a tax perspective. So what I suggest that you do is get your incentive in the form of rent free and then go and take out a mortgage for the majority of the fit out cost and then actually get that done. And so the whole thing is that preparation before you actually start going, because often people think I'm going to do something that's to deal with the tangible as opposed to the intangible, which is in business. I'm going to find myself a place. And then by the time that they're done with the market, they've pissed off every single agent in the state. They've talked to everybody and wasted their time, whereas it could have been actually a much simpler and less time cost perspective or outcome for them if they were to actually have had some advice around, okay, this is the location, this is the demographics in the area, this is our offering, this is what we're really good at.
It kind of shows you, people try to be Superman, they try to do everything themselves, they try to carry the weight of the world on their shoulders. But the reality is we come to learn as we grow older, you can't. You're not a one-trick pony that just does everything. You have to get help from someone else. And I think we had an old saying, if you want to travel fast, go by yourself. If you want to travel far, go as a team. And that kind of result is real. The people that they jump on the treadmill, they're going absolutely nowhere, but they're spinning their legs really, really fast.
Yeah. In summary, go in with the plan and then make the inquiries. Because the thing is, you get one shot to impress a landlord. And remember that an agent is often the mouthpiece of the landlord.
Going back to the 5 C's, character.
Yeah.
Yep.
So their job is to do a deal and to represent the interests of the landlord. And if you lowball them and you're way off the market, then it actually does you a disservice because they might not even present the offer to the landlord.
Yep.
And there's certain situations where I've actually not done that because it just, like, imagine if I was to do that in a residential setting and you were selling your house and your agent came to you and said, hey, I found you an offer which is $200,000 below your asking price and it's a $1 million property in a market which should sell at $1 million.
Thanks, agent. Thank you for catering to my needs.
Yeah. So in the realm, and then it's just really dovetailing it into what your P&L can support.
Yeah, I think understanding like what you said, like just where you are, right? Where you are now, basically where you want to go, and like with the team, like we'll help you bridge that gap and help you get to where you want to go, basically.
Yeah. I think the ultimate, the overriding, the purpose of any one of these discussions is for those who don't know what they don't know. A lot of the time, I only know what I've read or what I've been told. But there are questions that don't even get formulated until you hear this kind of information. I mean, hearing about the maxillofacial things and the different methods that people need in order to set up a practice for a different purpose, it gives me a whole, I don't know how to say it, a smorgasbord of different ideas relating to these kind of clients. And then from your perspective, I mean, I can imagine the different structuring mechanisms that are required in order to get a person to that readiness for a practice. And if we just ignore the the medical side of the world,
Yeah.
we haven't even begun to talk about the engineers.
Yeah. That's
Yeah.
right.
For sure. And I guess that in summary, in my little black book, after the last sort of number of years of working across this space, there is probably 1 or 2 degrees of separation between me and you and the person that you really need to talk to. And I'm happy to sit down with you and actually help to find the people that will actually be able to help you in your situation if it comes down to it. We just need to define what the issues are.
Yeah.
And defining those issues, what the cost of not solving them, actually running through the whole process, what budget you want to allocate to it. If it's something that's not property related, it might be that that there's a wonderful business broker that I can introduce you to that's actually going to help you. And all you need to do as a next step is actually just sign up to the email list for them and then be aware of it. And we can define that scope. We can do that together. It's just really, how do we actually help you to get to where you want to go?
And progressing.
Yeah. And I know it's exactly the same for you. I mean, there's 100 things that you can't help with, but there's 2 or 3 things that you can. And, you know.
Can we, just before we finalize, what are the 5 C's again? Character, capacity, collateral, capital, and conditions.
Yeah.
That's it. Very important.
Yeah, so that's from a lending perspective. But I guess like the overriding theme, I think, is also just building the right team. And so for someone young, like whether they're a medical professional, they've gotten out into the industry, like start building that relationship with an accountant, start building a relationship with a real estate person, with a broker, with a lawyer. And I think over time, as you build that relationship, it's just easier to call upon when you have a question, because the key thing is we just don't want to make a dumb decision, right? And look stupid, because that decision, if you make a dumb decision, it's going to set you back. If you make the right decision, it's going to help you progress to where you want to go. So basically, the reason why we have a good team is just to make a better decision, a smarter decision.
You basically, that's the quiet Xeta branding. No detail, no data, no decision.
Well, it's great to have you both here today talking through a whole range of different things, lots of rabbit holes, lots of pearls of wisdom that we've produced. So Nathaniel, did you want to share about how to get into touch?
Yeah, so there's a few ways that you can get in touch with us. Easiest way is just give me a call. Our number's on Google or on our website, like www.loanlounge.au. Or if you jump on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, we have a channel as well. You can just type Loan Lounge and you'll be able to find us very easily.
Zander?
I'm from Xeta, Xeta, so very easy. Straight on LinkedIn or on www.xeta.com.au. We're also on Facebook and Instagram if you want to see some accounting memes. And other than that, it's the usual. We're always available. Pick up the phone, have a phone call. You can talk to us about anything.
Sounds good. And to reach me, rxproperty.com.au. Connect with me on LinkedIn. It's one of those things which you'll be able to find me under my name, Bryce Stickland. Otherwise, RX Property from the company page. So would love to connect. Happy to have a conversation. Just give me a call. All the details are there.
Great.
Thanks very much,
Thanks,
Stickland.
guys.
Much appreciated.
Cheers.